Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 74 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on this week Craig Siegel. Craig is the founder of CLS Experience. From Wall Street to personal development, tons of energy, great interview. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live in the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited today to have on our good friend, Craig Siegel.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing amazing, man. Thank you for doing this. I'm greatly appreciating you being on our podcast. As you guys are going to see through this whole podcast, Craig's a ball of energy. Ball of energy. It's going to be so much fun. Let's go. I always start off with our podcast by just pretty much talking about where you are, what you're currently doing, and then we let the conversation flow. So tell them about where you're doing, what you are right now in your life, work, business, and let's start the conversation flowing, brother.
Absolutely, buddy. First of all, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of yours. We've collaborated a couple of times already. Every single time we deliver, we manufacture magic. I think you're on absolute fire. You're destined for greatness. I'm very proud of you. And today's going to be no different. We will manufacture magic here today, my friend.
I love it.
So in regards to your question, where did the journey begin, right? So for me, after college, I went to Wall Street. I was a little bit lost in the wilderness with no compass, but I was ambitious. I wanted to make something of myself. And naturally, I landed on Wall Street. But the truth of the matter is I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was doing stocks. I was in a boardroom full of 200 brokers, and I was the rookie. And I didn't have the confidence that I have today as you and I speak right now. So it was at that point where I really started studying NLP, mindset, this, that, and I rebuilt myself. And I started to redesign my confidence and my DNA. And essentially, I became a grown man on Wall Street after college. And I worked my ass off, and I had a ton of success. And by using NLP techniques such as modeling and anchoring, I was able to become the top producer in the company within 3 to 6 months. And it was wild because when I was doing the NLP and the mindset, I rebuilt myself by using the techniques I teach in my program. And people think change takes a long time. It really doesn't. People aren't broken. Their frames are. And by readjusting my map of the world and my perspective, I was able to completely redevelop my confidence, rebuild myself. And I started having a ton of success. All the veterans were like, who's this rookie hotshot? But I just kind of stayed in my lane and did my thing. But ultimately, there came a time a couple of years into it, Jeff, where it started to get very stressful, and I was very strung out. As you can imagine with the stock market and stuff of that nature, there's a ton of unpredictability, and there's a lot of things out of your control. And so all of a sudden, I thought this was going to be my life the next 25 years. This is my career, making a ton of money for myself very young. And then I started to realize I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. And I'm not even sleeping. And I'm looking in the mirror and I don't love the path I'm heading down. And so ultimately it was time for me to pivot. And I left Wall Street after about 6 years. It was a very tough decision at the time. And I started a new company in an entirely different industry. Essentially, we provided working capital to small to mid-sized businesses all across the country. And I still have this business and it's very lucrative and there's not a lot of stress, which is great. That's what I kind of want to get away from. But look, man to man, I'm never going to sugarcoat everything. I wasn't waking up on fire for that. Yeah. I was just kind of doing it, and it was paying nicely. And like I said, there was no anxiety. But look, it didn't light my fire, Jeff. And you know better than anyone how important it is to wake up excited. Yeah, like everything that you're doing right now. And I just see the spark in you, and it's contagious. And I love that. And so at this time, I got some personal news. My father had gotten diagnosed with cancer at the time, and he's still battling. I'm very proud of him. And I got out of a relationship. It was like a bunch of things at once. I left Wall Street. I was in this new career. This, for me, was my rock bottom. The walls were caving in, so to speak. And I don't know if I would use the word depressed, but I wasn't happy. And you know, there's nothing more terrifying than waking up every day unsure of your path and and feeling like you're unfulfilled. And so I started to use all this built up energy and fuel that I had, and I channeled it as an outlet to running. I'd always been a weightlifter. That's my thing for fitness. But I started to run, and I found it very challenging, but also doable, because in my personal opinion, running is 95% mental. It's that voice in the head that you have to overcome.
100%.
And so I went, and so I went from not being able to run a mile without stopping. I have a very addictive personality. That very next year, I conquered 4 marathons, including a 3:39 PR personal record last year in Philly, which was super cool and a ton of fun. It was a great outlet for me. But Jeff, I wasn't going to become a professional runner. It was just an outlet for me for all this built up energy that I had, because I wasn't fulfilled on a daily basis with the work stuff and so forth. Ultimately, the pandemic happened, and we talked about this a little while back, you and I. So you're going to relate to this, but the pandemic for me was the first moment that I had in about a decade where I was able to just pause for a moment, right? Because you couldn't go to work even if you wanted to, and work had slowed down, and we were in a quarantine. And this is going to sound pretty spiritual, but I spoke to God, and the stars aligned for me. And it was like, of course, everybody would always come to me through the years for inspiration and motivation and an uplift. So now that I realize that the writing's always been on the wall, now it's time to make this our life. And so I went all in just like that. And I created Cultivate Lasting Symphony, which is a play on my initial CLS. And I started putting out content, Jeff. And look, I wasn't sure exactly how the audience would relate to it. You never do. You know, even when you start your podcast, you don't know exactly the kind of reaction you're going to get. But here's what I did know. I didn't want to be someone I'm not. I don't want to be some jerk with a Rolex standing next to a flashy car. Look, I've lived life. Like I'm very humble at this point in my life, and I wanted to just come across as me, real, authentic, and as raw as possible. Put out content. People started loving it. They were gravitating towards it. I launched a coaching program, the Moonshot Masterpiece Experience, sold out the first day. Couldn't believe it. I launched the second one a month later. That sold out the first day. And just everything's been unbelievable since then. I had the podcast coming out, which you're going to be on very soon. I got the YouTube channel. I got speaking engagements, all sort of things. And this CLS thing kind of just blew up. And the world thinks it's an overnight success. But what you know, what I know, what no one else sees is the 20-hour days, working my ass off every single day, giving this whole thing my blood, sweat, and tears. Because after all, this is my purpose. I finally identified that after all these years. And it also happens to be my passion. So I'm waking up every single day excited because I legitimately love in my heart of hearts to help people, to give them that fire back and see them transform.
There's so many things I'm going to dive into that. Usually I cut off, but you're such a roll, so I didn't cut you off. But let's usually I cut off and start asking questions all the way through. But there's all these things I'm going to do a little flip back on. NLP is something that you utilize NLP for a lot of your sales, essentially, which it was funny because I was actually a guest on a podcast this morning and we were having this whole conversation. And it's so amazing that at 43, I think we talked about it. I'm back in school. I'm taking NLP. I just actually got certified as a master NLP. And
awesome.
When I was 19 years old, I had, you could call it, it wasn't even a mentor. I had a sales guru that I kind of worked under. I had my own company called Millennium Bodies, and I had a sales guru that I worked under, and he was teaching me sales tactics. I'm 43. This is going on to 24 years ago. And it was all about commonality. It was all about building rapport. It was all about eye movement, all this. And as crazy as 24 years later, taking an NLP course, I was like, this guy had it, understood NLP to a T, and it was all sales related. And as crazy as I think is so many things you could take out of NLP towards sales that are so vital for people to learn. And so I love that you were talking about that. So did you have NLP training? Did you just read about it? Like, where did that part of you came?
Great question. Also, I want to say that NLP does a lot more than strictly sales. I really apply it in all areas of life. It's technology that's unbelievable. In regards to learning it and training it, when I was on Wall Street in the very beginning, I started working with a mentor who does, he's an NLP practitioner and whatnot. And I worked with him for years. And then from there, really just using the world as my oyster, reading books, YouTube, podcasts, this and other thing, just absorbing and being a sponge, learning every single thing I possibly could on the subject.
Yeah, it's an amazing little tool to have, and you can utilize it, like you said, to so many different outlets. So when you did that switch from Wall Street to your own company, did you have partners on the first company?
So yeah, I have a partner in the working capital company, still do.
Okay.
And I had one also on Wall Street. So for me right now, my partner's kind of over there doing it, and I'm flying with the CLS thing. It's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So what kind of relationship do you guys have? You guys have a very strong relationship. Is he related to you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he one of my best friends that I grew up with ever since kindergarten.
Oh, very, very cool. Okay, very cool. So that
Yeah,
company is still up and running and still obviously working and functioning perfectly. So
correct.
when you started this venture and you started your moonshine, obviously your educational courses and all that stuff like that, where was your mindset with structuring it and putting it together? And what were your mindset of what you were trying to get out with your clients when you first started? I always like learning that.
It's such a good question, Jeff. And, this was kind of the most exciting part when I started it because, look, I didn't have a coach or a mentor or a business coach per se.
Yeah.
And I'm not against them. Let me be clear. Every coach should have a coach and so forth. It's just for me, I just use the world as my oyster. I was on Instagram. You see a lot of people that do this. You hear a lot of the failures, right? It takes years. You have to rebrand. You fail a launch. You have to, you don't get any clients. Take on clients for free just to get experience. I learned and absorbed all this. And my thought process was this. I see what everyone did. I don't necessarily have to fail. What I have to be able to do is put out valuable content, tangible, be very rich on exercise and techniques. And then people will transform, they'll do testimonials, and we can fly with this thing. And so when it came to constructing the course, the Moonshot Masterpiece Experience, I essentially put together what I used when I got to Wall Street to really go from lost in the wilderness with no confidence to rebuilding myself, to starting 2 8-figure business from the ground up, no experience. And I put it all together. So for example, a bunch of the beginning modules and weeks with the coaching calls consist of modeling, anchoring, big NLP tools that help you adjust your state and so forth.
Yeah.
A lot of it also has to do with structure, get you organized and routine. I know you're big on that. And there's just a lot of stuff that go into it. But mostly when I put it together, I knew what worked for me because I experienced. So I'm confident that my unparalleled ability to communicate, it's going to work for everybody else as well, as long as they buy in.
Yeah. So your course, how many students or clients do you take on one time for each course?
So you're gonna make a face right now because, and a lot of people ask me this and they can't believe it. In the beginning, you want as many clients as you can get because you're grateful, right? So you don't want to turn clients down because ultimately it's hard to get them. Since they both sold out, I took on probably more clients than I should have. I took on 25 one-on-one clients within the first 2 programs combined, which obviously occupies a ton of time and energy. But I learned a lot from the experience. And now going forward, as I begin to launch number 3 in here in a couple of weeks, it's going to be a little bit less clients at a time.
Yeah. It's a lot of energy, a lot of time when you're dealing with one-on-one because it's for you to focus properly on them and give them what they need. It takes a lot of time and attention. I agree with that. Have you ever thought of doing a module where it's more of a membership base where they're working together as a group and you could all work as a group, almost like a mastermind? Have you ever put any thought process into that?
Fantastic question. I'm actually working on that right now. And look, in the beginning, I wanted to do the one-on-one. I wanted to get my feet wet. I believe I've mastered how that process works. So now ultimately the next step is, how does Craig preserve his energy, right? And the answer is a mastermind where it's more of a group setting. But here's the thing that I struggle with, Jeff. My limiting belief was like, as opposed to a fitness mentor or someone who's coaching someone to build a business, when it comes to personal development, it's very personal, right? Some of my clients are dealing with a nasty divorce. Someone's trying to start a new business. Someone just had a death in the family. It's all very different. So I thought that it would be too difficult to have that in a group setting. But now that, I've been organizing and strategizing, obviously picking people's brains, I'm going to make it work. People just have to buy into the mastermind and the camaraderie of being in a small, intimate gathering. Not everyone has to have the same problems per se, but some of the tools that you can use to fix those can be applied to everything. So that's next in the pipeline. Great question.
Yeah. It's very interesting how you're saying that because a proper mastermind, if it's run properly, could benefit everybody, right? And I mean, there's going to be the individual is going to want some more one-on-one time with you, which is fine, and you could accommodate those. But having a mastermind is it allows you as a brand to grow. And that,
100%.
and all of the long haul, that's what you want to do. You want to build yourself as a brand, right?
Absolutely.
Let's go back into your running mindset with your running. How often do you run a week? Where's your mindset with that? How much is that part of your life right now? And I know you have a couple of goals for the Boston Marathon, all that. Let's talk about that a bit.
So this morning, just to get ready for you and your high energy, I ran a half marathon, but I wouldn't typically do that on a Thursday. It's a good question. Running is a big part of my life. Is that for
me, or to bring down some of your energy a bit?
It's a great question. Probably a little bit of both. Running now will be a part of me forever. God willing, I can physically go.
Yeah.
Because it's become such an outlet to me, Jeff. And, where I said earlier, I used to be a weightlifter and just get in the gym and clang and bang, and so to speak. But for me now, running is where the magic happens. It's where I chat with God. It's where I do most of my best brainstorming, strategizing. I absolutely love it. But at the same time, you got to listen to your body. So I run about 4 times a week now. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday will be a nice long run for the week. And then Sunday, a little shakeout run for recovery. And then the other days of the week, I'll do some weights and stuff like that. But ultimately, I ran 4 marathons last year. In the beginning, I ran the first one kind of to inspire my dad, who was going through cancer, because here I was taking on this grand moonshot. Who am I to run a marathon? I did that. And from there, as competitive as I am, I was like, you know what? We did that, but I bet you we could do better. And then I started studying and working on it and basically readjusting my map of what I thought possible for myself. I wanted to break 4 hours, which in the running world, it's a thing. It's a good number. Yeah. So I broke 4 hours, not the second try, but the third in San Francisco on a very tough course, as you can imagine, with the bridges and whatnot. And so I finally broke 4 hours, which for me was a great goal. And let me be clear. I tried to do it on the second one in Texas, but I failed. But did I really fail, or did I learn? As you'll know, you learn. Exactly. Yeah. But, I'm proud to say it took me a third try at the marathon distance to crack that 4 hours. And then once I did that, my map of the world understood what I was capable of. 2 months after that, in Philly in the pouring rain last November, I shattered 4 and ran 3 hours and 39 minutes. It's not a coincidence. It's because my mindset was now, look what you could do. Now it's more like, what can't we do? And so to answer your question going forward, a big moonshot of mine is to be able to qualify for the Boston Marathon, which is the only course that you have to actually qualify for.
Yeah.
In other words, you have to run a different course at a certain time. The ironic part is for my age bracket, I have to run a different course in under 3 hours and 10 minutes, which is almost impossible, but it's doable and I will get it done. Right now, not a lot of marathons are going off because of the pandemic, but they're starting to come back. So we'll see what the future holds. But I did not forget about that Boston qualifier.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So with the weight training, what age did you start actually working out and getting into fitness? Because I think that's a huge component of a lot of youth. And I find with a lot of parents is instilling fitness into children at a young age. And I think we talked about this. My kids are 12 and 14 and they're workout fanatics. They don't play video games. They work out 4 or 5 times a week. Like I'll come home and my 14-year-old daughter is on the treadmill doing an hour run every night. Like it's that mindset and they realize the benefit, they see the benefit, and they're starting from a very young age. And that was something even myself, like I've been working on my whole life. Fitness is a huge part of it. And I never put my children in a situation where I never tell them to do something I can't do myself. So I work out with them. I do everything they say. We go on family bike rides. We go on jogs together as a family, all 4 of us, which is everybody in the neighborhood thinks we're crazy, but it's that fitness. I think it's so important to start at a young age. So what age did you start getting into fitness and how important was it growing up?
So look, when I was growing up, a big thing was like the Arnold Schwarzeneggers of the world and all those guys with the big muscles. I also was big into wrestling, stuff like that. So I got into lifting weights when I was in high school. I would say probably about 16. And I loved the results that I saw. It gave me a little level of confidence because essentially you're like an artist and your body's a sculpture and you work out hard and you see results. And it was a beautiful thing. And
so you were into the bodybuilding at one point. That kind of mindset?
Not bodybuilding competition, but yeah, I lifted weights and I liked that look. Yes, yeah. That was my thing. And then I really did that for 15 years. That was how I worked out. I was never really a runner. I'll be straight up with you. I'm not super athletic. Then I got into the running thing and it just blew my mind how mental it was and how challenging, but also how doable and how special that became.
Would you ever consider an ultra marathon?
Not yet, no. But I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm certainly not opposed to it.
It's funny because we get a lot of, I have quite a few guests I was actually on like I said, I was on a podcast this morning, and the gentleman that the host of the podcast, he's run 24 ultra marathons.
Wow.
And these are
That's impressive.
100K ultra marathon, which is insane. These are like, whatever, like 24 hour runs or whatever, which is absolutely, you can't talk about anything being more of a mind game than in that. Right.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about that mind game. When did that flip in your head when you are running? Where's your mindset? Like, how do you get that mindset? Just for other listeners that are looking into getting to running or thought of something they could do physically in that category. Where's that mindset? Like, where do you zone in and able to just flip the switch and just get in the zone? I think that's such an important thing to learn how to do, right? Because you utilize that, utilize that towards everything else in your life as well, right? Is that control, that zoning, right? The
100%. Absolutely. And let me be clear, NLP was a big attribute to my success in running, because I learned from the first run that I went on, and I remembered it was a couple of years back, that am I really tired physically, or is it that voice in my head that's telling me I'm tired? And I learned very quickly that it's the voice in your head. And for example, during a marathon, let's just say 15, 18 miles in, you're going to get that voice in your head. I don't care who you are, because on my podcast, I just had on the greatest female runner of all time, and she agreed with this. That voice in your head will come, and it'll say something like this: Craig, you're good. You ran 18 miles. You're done now. You can relax. So what I do, what my technique is as follows. I allow it to speak. I let it finish its statement, and then I tell it to absolutely beat it. I stiff arm it. I let my Craig stunt double take the gunfire, and then I just continue going this way, and I completely disregard the voice. Also, another great tool that you can use, which I never really spoke about in an interview before, is you can change the tonality of the voice in your head. You can make it less intimidating. You can make it almost goofy, so you can completely own it. And once you start to own that voice in your head, there's not a lot that you can't accomplish.
That is very NLP right there. I love that.
Yes, sir.
How's your dad doing?
He's doing as good as he can be, Jeff, and I appreciate you asking. He's battling cancer. It's, he's my dad's a little bit older, 84 years old, because I have an older brother. But he was healthy his whole life, and he got diagnosed with lung cancer a couple of years back. He never even smoked a cigarette. So, look, it sucks for lack of better words, but we're doing everything that we can. He's going through the treatment, and I keep him positive. And I think that plays a big role when you're fighting cancer, is the will and the mental strength to want to survive, to want to fight, because I think it's easy to get defeated sometimes with stuff like that. So he's doing as good as he can be. I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that, because I could give you two examples of close friends of mine. I've lost two close friends, both battled cancer. One, he was 34 when he passed away, and very young, very close friend. We grew up together. He was one of my only friends that I actually kept all the way through high school. We ended up dating friends, which is my wife and his wife. They were friends. We ended up dating, got married at the same time, had kids at the same time, went to work. One day he just collapsed, got brought into the hospital. I know it's pure off topic, brought into the hospital. On Monday, they found out he had a tumor in his head right away. They found it, and then they ended up finding it was cancer. And he lasted 6 months. 6 months after he found at 34. And
that's quick.
But the minute he heard that letter C, he gave up on life. He did not want to be around anybody. He just gave up on life. And then I had another story of another buddy of mine that did find out his cancer, and he started going on vacation, started living life, living life to the fullest, and ended up living quite a few more years. And it was 100% because of his attitude, 100% because of his mindset. He embraced it. He embraced it and understood it, and did not take it for granted, but made every day count, lived in the moment, but also lived with a smile. And it wasn't like, I think that I always tell people shifting the mindset is when you're able to shift your mindset. And an example, as a parent, I always hear people say like, "Oh, I got to go pick up my kids." No, you get to pick up your kids. I get to go to you get to go to work. It's shifting that mindset. And once you're able to shift that mindset and have appreciation for what you have, and appreciate the gratitude of what is in front of you, and how precious we are to be here, and how be grateful for what you have, everything changes. And I think that was with my other friend, was he was able to grasp the gratitude and understand the moment, and had a supporting family like you're doing for your pops and your family. And he lived a good another 2-3 years of healthy, not even healthy, but he lived good. He enjoyed life and he traveled in quality. So I think that's such an important thing. And my prayers and hopes go for your father to live another 10 years and be around you guys. Right. So yeah,
I appreciate you saying that, Jeff. And you know, it could be a controversial subject for people that go through cancer or have loved ones that do. Is it mental or is it not? And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I totally agree. You have to have that will, that faith, and that positive attitude. It does wonders in all aspects of life.
Yeah. And I mean, you could flip it in a different mindset, where I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody too, with when it comes to mindset, it's whether you're the top athlete. I think we talked about this, whether you're the top athlete at any sport. If you put, coming out of college, 20 athletes, basketball athletes, for example, and put them all in line, they're probably all got the same gifts. What's going to stop the best one to become the best in the NBA? Is that mindset, that drive, that relentless ability. I got the word relentless tattooed on my wrist. Relentless.
I love that.
Relentless ability, never to quit, and having that mindset. And I think that even goes with business, because we're having this conversation too the other day, where when you look at an entrepreneur, do you believe that entrepreneurs are naturally born as an entrepreneur, or where's your mindset with that? Do you believe entrepreneurs are naturally born? I think we talked about this, or is this something you could be taught? Where's your mindset with that?
I 100% believe it could be taught. Now, that's not to say that certain people aren't born with a little bit more of entrepreneurial spirit. That might be true, but these tactics and techniques, you can definitely adapt and learn. So
you believe, and this is a question I go back and forth with all the time, Craig. So do you believe that you could teach somebody the techniques, you could teach somebody, give everybody the tools they need to succeed, but don't you believe that person has to want to succeed, or has to want to do it?
Yes.
And that's something that's built in somebody. Like, not everybody's going to want to get up at 4:30 every morning. Not everybody is going to want to be like 7:00 at night, my computer's shut off, and you know what? I could turn on my computer back. The kids are going to bed, work for another 4 hours, knowing that I could spend another 4 hours with my kids tomorrow. Like, it's having that drive. And I think a lot of people, they don't have it. They might have it for a month. They might have it for 2 months when they're excited about the new venture, but are they going to have it over the long haul? And I think that's the difference from most companies that succeed and grow is having founders and owners that are relentless and don't give a shit, and they're going to do what they has to be done to get there.
This is such an important topic to discuss. And, you know, I go back and forth both ways. For example, I take pride in being able to light the fire in some clients of mine that the fire's been out for years.
Yeah.
And I take pride in being able to help revamp their mindset so that they get determined and driven, and it's life lasting. Here's the thing. You're absolutely right. Inspiration and motivation is temporary. Anybody could watch a Rocky movie, get excited for a month. But then what happens when the obstacles and the turbulence come in? Then it's easy to quit, right? But if you revamp someone's mindset on their perspective, what they associate pain and pleasure with, if they look forward to obstacles because it's an opportunity to get creative and use it as challenges, that'll last forever. But then again, I also agree with what you said. If someone just doesn't have it, the it factor, they're always defeated. I don't know if they can be saved. You have to want to see a better life for yourself. You have to be willing to adapt. You have to be coachable. And there's definitely certain people that aren't.
With yourself, Greg, growing up, like, you're a ball of fire. You got a ton of energy, and
appreciate that.
And you're obviously an individual. You can tell right off the bat, if you put your mind to something, you're going to be driven to get it done. And I'm very much like that.
Thank you.
Growing up, were you like that growing up?
You know, it's interesting. There were definitely signs that I had that hustler mentality when I was younger, very competitive, and, you know, that attitude that when I put my mind to something, it's getting done. But not until after college and when I really started revamping my mindset with the NLP stuff did I put it all together. But there were definitely signs.
Give me an example on something.
Just like even when I was younger, like, you know, I remember one summer I was a golf caddy. when I was really young.
Yeah.
And I just appreciated hanging around, these big, successful, powerful guys and just kind of listening to their conversations, because you never want to be the smartest guy in the room, right? I thought I could learn from them, but also I was making a little bit of cash on the side. I was a golf caddy while, other friends were out playing, doing whatever the case may be. So that's just an example of like, I was always driven and ambitious, but I didn't necessarily have a game plan until after college. I got to Wall Street and then I kind of put it all together.
When you got to Wall Street, your initial job, like how right out of college, was it a placement? How did you get a job into Wall Street? Because it's obviously very competitive, right?
Yeah, I just, it was always appealing to me, like stocks and numbers and stuff like that. And obviously the movies make it, a little bit more glamorous. Yeah. And so, I just went to a smaller firm and I took my Series 7, Series 63 exams. I got licensed and, I started being a stockbroker. And then, like I said, it was a ton of fun. It was very exciting, but then it comes with all the stress. And ultimately, I wanted to do something that was more just build my own thing, which is why you and I are talking here today. And ultimately, it was a great stepping stone.
Where do you see your company grow in the next, say, 3 years, 5 years?
CLS?
Yeah.
So I want to say this as humbly as possible, but I don't know how humble it can come across. When I had this vision to start this, and I told you the stars aligned, I looked at this thing 3 years out, and then I reverse engineered it. Yeah. And my thought process was this. Yeah. I want to be the biggest thing the world's ever seen with personal development. I want to be bigger than Tony Robbins. I want to be the Apple of personal development, not selfishly. I just want to be able to help and reach as many people as I possibly can by revamping their mindset and showing them a different life for themselves and helping them understand that the ending of their story hasn't been written yet. And ultimately working backwards and said, we got to start somewhere. Let's start putting out content and taking one-on-one clients on. God willing, it's taken off. And ultimately, to answer your question in a nutshell, the end goal is to be able to reach as many lives and as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah, I love that.
I just want to make the world a better place, as cliche as it sounds.
Yeah, 100%. So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
Just an older brother.
Older brother. So your nephew's obviously
my best friend in the whole world.
What's the age difference?
My best friend. It's a nice gap, about 7.5, 8 years. My brother just turned 43. I'm 35.
Yeah, so your brother's my age. So he was born in 77. Yes. Yeah. So me and my sister is 6 years older than me. So we have the same thing. We have a big gap. What's your background? Is your
Jewish?
Your Jewish background. So that's a big gap.
Yeah.
So with your brother, is that your nephew's from your brother? That's
correct.
From that side. That's your nephew, right? How old is he?
Absolutely.
I see a lot of videos and photos of you. Obviously, he's special to you, right?
He's very special to me. The cutest human being I've ever seen. He'll be 6 months, December 17th. So he's about 5.5 months. 5.5 months.
So how? I mean, obviously, he's almost like your child because you're always with him and stuff like that. How has that evolved in your perspective of obviously one day being a father yourself?
First of all, I always loved kids. It's no secret. I'm really good with kids, and I can't wait to be a dad one day. But ultimately, having a nephew is kind of the best of both worlds, right? Because I don't have all the responsibilities. I could focus a lot of my attention right now on myself and CLS, so I could help people. But my brother's, my nephew is just the cutest thing I've ever seen, and I really bonded with him over Thanksgiving a couple of weeks back. Just he's starting to engage so much more. And like, he was just like looking into my eyes for like 5-10 minutes. There was one time, and anywhere I would go, he would just follow. And it was like, he was looking into my soul. It was like, this guy belongs to me. He's going to protect me. And the truth of the matter is I'll protect that kid until my last breath. I treat him like he's my own son until, God willing, I have my own children. But yeah, he means everything to me.
I love that. So with yourself, I always ask a couple questions near the end of the podcast. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be described to your closest relatives, your friends, your family? In a few words, how would you want to be remembered or described?
It's funny because I recently had this conversation with my parents, and I was like, and I said, if I died today, this is how I want to be remembered. And they got mad at me, like, don't say anything like that. I'm like, all right, I apologize. I'm not going anywhere. But to answer your question, Jeff, if this was it for me, how would I want to be remembered? I want to leave a legacy that says this. People that knew me, worked with me, or even watched some of my content, legitimately, genuinely wanted to better themselves after it. Not just that they got a technique from it, like modeling or anchoring, but they watched one of my clips. They felt that fire was contagious, and they legitimately wanted to better their life in any way that might be, whatever they were going through. My positive energy just made them want to inspire to be a little bit better, a little bit more.
I love that. I love that. With another question I always ask everybody near the end is superpower.
Fire away.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Like a unrealistic superpower or a real one?
Yeah, either way, something you think that would benefit, and if you're able to pass it on to the rest of the world.
I think my actual superpower is my ability to communicate with people, to help them actually want to, improve and so forth. That is my superpower, my ability to communicate. What would be my little bit of an unrealistic superpower? Listen, I'd love to be able to just put out a message about how to get people on fire and the whole world hear it in one shot. Somehow it all goes to their eardrums or their AirPods at a given time, so I can inspire more people at a time. Right now I'm working my way up. Everything's been great, but ultimately I want to be able to just spread the message even wider and even higher.
I love that. Last thing I'm going to ask you for today, with your techniques of NLP, with the anchoring and all that, is there any little lesson you want to pass on that's somebody that's struggling, whether it's through a marriage or through a struggling time right now with the pandemic, with their business, something to reframe their mind, a way to reframe their mind, something they could do at home to reframe their mind right now and kind of see things at a different mindset?
Sure. Give you quick two things that the audience can find very valuable. Number one, understand this. As scary as it may seem to take a step in a new direction, it's even more terrifying to go down the same path of unfulfillment and unhappiness every single day. To me, that's a worst case scenario, is going another 6 months, God forbid another 6 years, miserable. So as scary as it is to try something different, take a shot at life. Yeah. Okay. The second more tangible thing that people can actually get, and one of the things I teach in my anchoring part of my program, is this: you can find an experience from your past where you felt very elevated. Give you an example. For me, crossing the finish line of my first marathon, I remember how it felt. I remember how it smelled. I remember what I saw. I can put myself into that state on a deep level. I can anchor that, and I can take a minute and I can feel that, and then I will automatically be in an elevated state. So whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm going into it from a higher level, passion, a higher stance. And you can listen, people wake up often, especially in the pandemic. I know everyone's got a lot going on. A lot of people are often in lowered states. And when you're in a lowered state, it's harder to see solutions. You just see problems. You don't want to go to the gym. You don't want to make a phone call. You don't want to apply for a job. By anchoring a great state from the past and bringing it to your future, you'll elevate your state on command. And then from there, you'll have confidence to step into whatever needs to be done.
I love that. Very short, sweet.
I love you, buddy.
You're the best, man. You're the best. So when is your podcast land? When are you officially hopefully to get your first episode out?
So the CLS Experience Season 1 will be dropping mid to late December. Final date coming soon.
Okay. So I'm going to put on all our show notes. Hopefully we'll have more info on that by the time this podcast is released. So we'll put on all our show notes.
Absolutely.
Also, I'm going to get all the information, how to get a hold of Craig on our show notes, social media. If our audience wants to get a hold of you, what's the easiest route to get a hold of you?
I'd say where I hang out the most, Jeff, is Instagram at Craig Siegel _CLS. Also, YouTube channel, Craig Siegel. Facebook private community, which has a ton of intimate engagement. The Facebook group is called Cultivate Lasting Symphony, which is the same name of my website. And then obviously, again, the podcast, the CLS Experience, coming everywhere you listen to podcasts very soon. The trailer's already out, Apple, Spotify, all that.
Perfect. This is awesome, brother. Thank you so much for this. We talked about this before. I appreciate you. I appreciate connecting with you. I think we're going to be doing a lot of things together. And it's a small world, all the networking, right? You're talking to Mike Diamond, which is a buddy of mine now. And there's a small world of everybody in this field. And I appreciate it. I find as everybody, you're going to get the odd guy that's very competitive and not want to work with people. But most guys in this industry, they all want to help each other. They all want to help each other. They want to grow. And there's enough clientele for everybody. So just be open and help each other. And I appreciate you and I appreciate what you're doing, brother.
100%.
And anything you need,
100%.
you know where to get a hold of me. And thank you for being on our show, brother. Anything else you want to say to our audience?
Jeff, it was my pleasure. Anything you need as well. And for the audience listening, I just want to say how big of a fan I am of Jeff. Everything that you put out, there's always a message. There's always a purpose. It's always with intention. And there's just so much value in everything that you're doing. Like I said earlier, you're destined for greatness. Your best is yet to come. Just keep on doing your thing, my man. I'm so excited for your future as well.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much, buddy.
My pleasure.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank Craig for being a guest on our show. Great individual, tons of energy, bright future. Excited to see where his path leads him. If you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did, please spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family, leave a review. I love listening to the reviews, reading them. Once again, thank you. And until next week, guys, keep moving forward.